Okay gang, so what we're going to do some oxy welding. I'm just going to tack these two panels together and then going to do some fusion welding. First thing is I want to explain a couple of things. What I'm using is a low pressure Colt tip, which is a small tip and a small setup which mixes the gas, as opposed to the Comet, which is a bigger, older one. They're a lot heavier, use a lot more gas, and you can save a bit of money if you've got something a bit smaller. There's a Dillon, or there's the Hand Rob 2000, or the little Colt is a good little one if you can get your hands on one. They're sort of old school, but if you can get one, they're worth it. So yeah, that's the Comet, and that's what most guys you can purchase these days. They're still good to use, but they just have a little bit more gas than normal. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack this together. I have here, this is from CIG, a economizer, which is a little gas switch which turns the gas on and off as you fire it up. This is already set, and then once you have finished tacking, you do what you do, you hang it up and it cuts the gas out, and then when you pick it up again, you just go bang and away it goes. It's ready to go again. So what we're trying to do now is, it's all about when you work for yourself, you want to save a bit of money here and there. Something like that costs you a little bit more to start out with, but it'll save you a lot of money in gas. So if you can do that and your gas lasts you 12 months rather than every 3 months, well, there's a lot of saving. You can be welding for 2 hours, but you might have your torch running for 8 hours. So alright, so what I'll do, I'm going to put on my number 5 helmet. Now, you normally get lenses, and they're number 5 lenses by that, but I wear glasses, so unfortunately I don't like wearing it with those. So what I do is put my glasses on and then got my helmet on. Alright, so here we go. So what we got here, we want to get, it's all about getting the flame right. So we want to get some feathers on the end, so we just fire it up. These are feathers, what you want. Alright, so the feathers are down here. We want to get a few feathers on the end, and then we turn the oxygen on, and then once we fire up the oxygen, bring that little cone all the way down till it sits over the other cone, which is right at the end of the tip. Okay, so that's it. So I've got 2 bits of panel steel here, which is 1mm cold rolled sheet metal, and I've cut it up into 200mm lengths. And what I'm going to do, I like to leave, different guys teach different ways, I like to leave a gap at the end. There is a rule of thumb, over a distance of 12 inches you use about a 1/4 of an inch of gap. Now ultimately we're talking, it's not quite 12 inches, this is 8 inches, so you want a bit less than a 1/4 of an inch of gap, which is roughly 4 or 5mm. So if you've got that gap to start out with, to me, I find this is the way I teach, is the best way that I see. Start out with a gap, otherwise it'll end up closing up as you go, and it'll keep closing up. In saying that, if it does start to close up, there are a couple of little tricks that you can do to sort of help you out along the way. So what we'll do, we'll tack together now. We'll put a first tack, and the tack will be about 10mm or 1/4 of an inch in from the end. Going to put a little bit more gas on there, it's just not quite enough. A bit more acetylene. Okay. Right, now if you've seen that, it's opened up and closed up. Now we're going to put the next tack at the end of that blue circle. That's where you gauge where your next tack's going to be. You put the end of the blue circle, and if you have a look, you can see that the metal's opening up. Tack that together. That's all good. The metal's opened up again, and then it starts to close again. I normally count 15 seconds in between tacks, but I'm too busy talking, but that's alright. So as you see it start to close, just before it gets really close to the end, you go for the next tack. You're doing that, you see it all open up again. Now what happens, it does open up, but where you're heating the red part of the metal, it actually gets closer together. So even though it's widening up that end, it gets closer where you're heating that metal to red hot. And then you'll hold it down for the distance, roughly the distance, bring that down a bit, roughly the distance of the length of the cone on your oxy welding tip is the distance you want off your job, off your bit of sheet metal. So yeah, that's probably, you know, 5 millimeters long. So you want to keep the distance off your sheet metal to about 5 millimeters. Your tacks go fairly even because you've got your little blue heat marks, and that gives you an idea where you put the next one. Okay. Okay, so sometimes you try and concentrate. No matter how hard you concentrate, the thing tends to move a little bit. So what you've got to do is have a bit of a plan B in option. It's starting to split one way or the other, so I'm probably going to cheat a little bit here. Get a pair of pliers just to hold those two down together. Now it's time to tack. Now one of them is lower than the other, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put a bit more heat on the lower side, just a fraction, slightly to the lower side, so that it gets a bit of a tack together, and it should raise up higher. Alright, now it's still opened up. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a tap, just to get them down the same level. You don't need to beat the daylights out of it, you just need to get the metal down together. Now, it still seems to be fairly flat, so that's a good thing. Here we go, back again. Now what I'm going to do, that's sort of, the end's slightly closed up, so what I'm going to do, as I said, if you've done a bit too, if it's closed up a bit too much, you heat up the last tack that you did, it just opens up the gap a little bit, and that gives you a little bit of time, then you can put your next tack at the end of that circle. Okay, so now let's warm that up, and here we go, the next tack. I normally count to 15 in between each tack, so it's a little bit onto the low side. I'll give it a bit more heat slightly to the low side to bring it up the same height. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's a matter of working the metal. Don't get nervous. You get a bit nervous sometimes, but you can be in control. So just be patient with it. You've got to be patient. You can just rush in and just weld it. It'll distort all over the place. Now when you're tapping it too, always try and tap it onto a flat surface. If you're dressing up a bit of flat metal, dress it up on a flat surface, because otherwise you're automatically tapping it onto a round surface. You're actually shaping it as you want, and you don't want to shape it. We're tacking this together for practice, so we want to try and keep it as sort of flat as possible. Give that another little dress up. The heat distorts it all a little bit, but that's still hot now. So once it cools down, it should sort of hopefully come out like one of these ones that I've prepared earlier, as they say in the classics. But yeah, so what we'll do, we'll just up to about 12, 13, 14, 15, so still counting. Now once you get close to the end, you'll find that there'll be a bit more heat towards the end of the bit of metal, and you want to be careful that you don't blow a hole on the end. So ultimately what we're trying to do, it's still managing to open up and then it closes up again. And I'll do another tack there, and I'll do one right towards the end, but you just don't want to blow the end of the metal away. As I say, the one that's the lowest, you tend to put a little bit more heat to the lower side so as it raises it up to the same level. I'm just going to give that one a little tap just to get that end together. going to put one little tack just towards the end and make it quick. Alright, that's it. So, sort of this end's cooled down a little bit. I'm just going to dress it up a little bit, as I say, don't beating the daylights out of it. You just want to give it a bit of a, just sort of the weight of the hammer. Everything's sort of flat. Have a bit of a look. See the eyeball, it's got a little bit of hook in it still at the moment, but once we dress it up, when it's finished, it shouldn't be too bad at all. We'll give it a run now. Go from one end to the other. Just check that. Sometimes the gas changes a little bit from the pressure of the gauges, but that's alright. As long as you're aware of it, you can fix it before you start welding. You don't want to get the wrong tip when you're welding. That's called a carburizing tip, and then too much oxygen is called an oxidizing tip. You don't want that. You want an actual neutral flame, and your neutral flame is about there. Alright. Same deal. I don't weld all the way from one end to the other. I'll do some counting for about 10 seconds. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A bit more. A bit more acetylene, a little bit more oxygen. But normally, yeah, you do about 10 seconds and then I wait for about 20 seconds. So do that, and you end up with the... Yeah, we're not overheating the panel all the way through. Now you can do little circles, but I just tend to, something that's got a good joint like that, I just tend to leave it as it is. It still gets good penetration. You can have a look in the back. Now we can roughly count here, about 20 seconds because we've just spent some time in there. I mean, it's got penetration there, it's all good. Trying to keep it fairly flat. Just ever so slight little circles just to do it. Now it'll expand and drop down, so you don't want to overheat it and do it too much. So it'll go down, and once it's gone down so far, it'll sort of start to flatten out. You don't want to go dressing it up yet, because if you dress it up right now, you'll end up shrinking it back, and it'll shrink the whole thing in a different way all the way along the panel. So best thing to do is just to leave it. You can dress it up towards the end. It's about 20 seconds, I suppose. I mean, there may be times you need to dress it up. As you practice, you'll sort of work out how your metal, how you work with your metal. You might have to dress it here and there because sometimes there might be a bit of a gap. Sometimes you might blow a hole and you've got to put a bit of metal in there. You just grab a bit of welding wire. But what we're doing at the moment, this is just fusion welding, and we're just trying to show how you can do it without using any wire at all. And then once you get to the stage of being able to do it with a wire, then you're doing two hands at the same time. It gets a little bit tricky, but at the same time it's still easy to do. Time. So again, it's roughly the same distance of the length of the cone off your job. Just get a little molten pool going. I might just dress that up. It is sinking down a little bit, so as I say, sometimes it might need to. In this case we're going to just light weight with the hammer. Not too bad. Seconds. Right, so as you can see, I mean the fusion is going nicely. Penetration's in. I mean sometimes you can overdo it, you can burn too low and you end up undercutting the top, and the bottom has this big dag hanging out the bottom. You don't really want to do that, so it's all a bit of practice. The distance of the cone off the end of the job is what you want. And stop for another 20 seconds. I'll dress that up. Sometimes you got to make it cool to do it. $15, $16, $17, $18, $19, $20. As I say, if you rush into it, you do it too fast, you'll end up distorting the daylights out of it, and you won't want to play the game at the end when you're dressing it up. Alright, business end. Normally when you're tacking two jobs together, it's not always perfectly flat. This is good for practice, but once you're doing it and they're odd shapes, it makes it a little bit harder. So, but in saying that, you put your tacks in together and you just work the metal properly and don't beat the daylights out of it too much and your tacks won't break. So try and remember that. Get to the end, I'm just going to flick off the end. And that's it. That's all. Alright, so there we go. It's all fused together. Not too bad, fairly flat. And as you can see, penetration is good. Nice, fairly tidy weld. You can sort of tell where you've got even marks all the way down there where you've got even heat. Sometimes you can tell how your welding's going. If you've got heat on the wrong side, you may be aiming your torch in a different direction. You always got to aim your torch directly down the line of the weld itself, and if you're doing that, you keep your angle at about 45 to 60 degrees. Roughly 60 degrees is where I think I am usually. And yeah, if you do that, do all your tacks, go pretty much at the end of each of those blue heat spots. Once you've got to the end, you dress it up a little bit, and then you start your welding from one end. You can go to the other, wait, you weld for 10 seconds, you wait for 20 seconds, you weld for 10 seconds, you wait for 20 seconds. It's sort of a bit of a routine. Then you dress it up as you go, and hopefully you'll end up with a good weld, and good luck to you. Alright, bye bye.